Are you the quantum mechanics?
Yes, we are the Quantum Mechanics. We're the paranormal podcast for the believers, the doubters, and everyone in between. We have a new Patreon this week as well. So, Claire, thank you very much for joining us and supporting us. Really helps us, and we really appreciate it. So, thank you, and thanks to all our Patreons who are with us. What can we say? Go to patreon.com/TQMpod if you want to become a Patreon. Cheaper per month than 1 cup of coffee, although there's no free sugar or stirrer included. I should point that out, really.
Yeah, no, I mean, we could make Quantum Mechanics stirrers. Is that a good bit of merch?
Feels a bit random.
It's a bit lame. What's the most random piece of merch? Because we both worked in the media for a long time. The most random piece of merch that I had was back in the 2000s. There was at the TV festival, just specifically to advertise one of the terrestrial channels, they were giving away milk. Okay. Like the middle milk cartons. And in America, there's missing persons on there. Yeah. But what they'd done is put all the staff that were appearing at the festival as like missing persons type of things around the milk. And I just thought that was so random. It's quite a random thing to be given.
I don't think I can top that for randomness.
Oh.
That's totally random. But yes, Patreons, no sugar, no stirrers, but you do get our main podcast early. You get exclusive access to our additional episode called Ben and Peter's Extra Scoop. Good community there, lots of chat. We had lots of great feedback on last week's episode. Access to the Discord server as well. So it's all going on there, and you're helping to support us. So thank you, and thank you, Claire, for joining.
Yes, and thank you to Stephanie for looking after our Discord server for us, because I can't. I just don't understand it. Speaking of things that I don't fully understand, I want to talk about magic this week, but not the sort that that Paul Daniels does. Well, it's sort of the sort that Paul Daniels does. But I want to talk about the Indian rope trick, because the Indian rope trick has fascinated me for ages, and it is a lot weirder than you think. Every story that you think you know about the Indian rope trick, I might be about to confound it.
Can I just summarise it, though? Because I kind of... So in my mind, the Indian rope trick is this rope kind of goes up. It's not attached to anything. It almost goes up into the sky.
It's thrown up by the fakir, the magician. Yeah, it's thrown into the sky.
Now, is this bit true or not? Then someone climbs it or not?
This is the classic trick. Then, so it stands rigid in the sky. A small boy climbs up the rope, and in legend of the trick as it's supposed to be done,
in legend of yore,
he goes so high that you can no longer see the boy.
Right.
The magician, the fakir, then feigns being furious with the boy, climbs up either with a sword or a dagger, and then the audience are upset and astonished as bloodied limbs start falling from the sky.
I didn't realise it got that graphic.
Yeah. Then the magician comes back down again, puts all the limbs into a basket, says an incantation, and then out jumps the boy whole. That's the trick as it was originally told, but we're going to get into...
Did he go to the boy, will you stop doing that? You do it every week.
So it is known as sort of, genuinely, some people call it the Mount Everest of magic. It's the world's most famous illusion, I guess, beyond sawing a woman in half.
And catching a bullet, I guess that's the other one. Yeah.
And so many people have kind of tried to look into it and work out, who performed it, who saw it, how did it all come about? Because you see versions of it on television. You'll even see a version that Penn and Teller do, where they kind of pull the trick apart in a different kind of way. But nobody, as far as I know, has ever done, as far as my research has ever done this version, certainly not on television. So was it real? Or perhaps Was it an act of mass hypnosis that tricked an entire crowd?
Oh, interesting.
It's possible. It's possible.
So a kind of hypnosis that led to almost a mass hysteria of what was going on. Wow. Okay.
Yeah. So let's go back to where it starts. This trick it became famous in the West, and the idea was that it had been passed down from generation to generation in what we would call the Indian mystics, which is a little bit of a patronising term, but that's kind of how people spoke about it in the 18th century. There's a famed 14th century traveller called Ibn Battuta, who describes seeing a similar trick performed in China, but not quite as elaborate. He wrote of a conjurer throwing a rope in the air. A boy then climbed it, disappeared out of sight. Later, there's a 17th century emperor. He wrote about a similar feat being performed, but not with a rope, but a chain. Mm-hmm. But these accounts are quite vague, and they lack the gore and dramatic flair of the trick that we were just discussing.
From a practical perspective, just so I get my head round it, boy goes up the rope, disappears, like kind of
yes.
In front of you, or is this rope going up into the clouds? Where's he? You know what I mean? If you're watching it, does he just disappear?
Well, this is the enigma of it, isn't it?
Okay, right.
So he goes up so high. The idea is that the crowd
you can't see him anymore.
Exactly, it's described as he's so high you can't see him.
Right.
Which is obviously very high because
very high indeed.
A grown man of average stature, you can see him a long way up.
Mile.
Yes, that's right. He climbs a mile.
Yeah, well, I know from my window in the living room, there's like a hill that's probably must be a mile away, and I can see sheep and cows.
Yeah. No, of course. Yeah. You've got very big animals that live obviously.
Huge sheep.
But this wasn't actually born in the East. The year is 1890, and the newspaper is the Chicago Tribune. And the paper published a story presented as fact from a reporter who claimed to have witnessed the full fat Indian rope trick.
Right.
A rope rising with
limbs and all.
Vanishing boy, gruesome dismemberment, the whole thing.
Yeah.
The story was an absolute sensation. It was picked up by newspapers all around the world and translated into almost every European language. For the first time, a large Western audience was exposed to a detailed eyewitness account of this impossible feat. And this is where the legend was born. But there's a problem with it. Can you guess what the problem is?
Didn't happen?
It's a lie.
Yeah.
Just 4 months later, the editor of the Tribune admitted the story was a complete hoax, written simply to increase newspaper circulation. How many times have we seen that on here? Yeah. But the damage was done, or perhaps the magic had already started to be spun, because the retraction received hardly any attention. People didn't want the truth. They wanted to know the mystery.
But it was a fantasy recounting of a trick that had been reported before. You're not saying he made it up in the first place, are you? Or are you?
That will become a bit clearer.
Okay.
That will become a bit clearer, because something strange started to happen. People started claiming they had actually seen it.
Right.
After the hoax story spread, eyewitness accounts began to emerge from Westerners who had travelled to India. One of the earliest was a man called S.T. Burchett, whose account from 1904 describes seeing a conjurer make a rope stand erect, a boy climb it, and then simply disappear at the top. So this is a subtle difference in how it's done.
So that's like puff of smoke vanishing, but without the puff of smoke. The boy just disappears.
Yeah,
right.
That's
Not
right.
off into the distance, but in front of your very eyes.
That's right.
Yeah.
The story kept growing. By 1919, a photograph, the supposed first visual evidence of the trick, was published in the Strand magazine. This was kind of proof to everybody who was thinking that they had seen it, that the legend was no longer a story. It was actually documented reality. And this is kind of where the paranormal debate starts. So I guess a parallel with this would be something like Slender Man, where it is, we know that it is a product of a competition online But then people start seeing it, and in fact, it's caused some tragic cases where people have, have claimed to have encounters with it and done terrible things. And it's also reminiscent of people who, when they're told something, they kind of remember that they misremember it. It becomes a false memory.
Right.
I looked online. Is there anybody who claims to have seen this trick outside of like a Penn and Teller recreation?
Yeah.
There are still thousands of people who claim, oh, my granddad saw this trick. Oh, my great-grandmother was traveling through India in the 1930s and saw this trick. There's still but it's all these third-hand accounts or second or third-hand accounts.
What I think's interesting about that is, as you were just talking, I was in my mind going, have I ever seen it? Like a YouTube or anything. I don't think I've even seen a Penn and Teller recreation. I've just not seen it. But it's weird when you describe the trick. It's almost like I can really strongly visualize it in my mind as if I had seen it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's some power about that, isn't there?
Oh, there is definitely some power about that. And because some of this is definitely down to this idea that there is knowledge in the East that we don't have in the West. So I guess we would know that more in modern times when, for example, when the Beatles discovered mysticism, and travel to India.
Yeah.
Is that kind of ideal? And let me tell you, there's a great quote here. So all these magicians started arguing that this wasn't at all possible. And there's a magician called Will Goldston, who was president of the Magicians Club. The quote was, "If it does exist, it is worked by methods completely unknown to Western magic and science, and I make this statement without qualification whatsoever." So I found a video clip from 1921 from Pathé News where they were doing it's a 5-minute piece about the Indian rope trick. And I thought, oh, this would be great. And I was going to get a clip of it for you. But it turns out it is monumentally racist and not appropriate for our show.
Right. Okay.
But actually what they're doing is parodying this. So the voiceover is as if they're saying, here is the great trick that everybody is talking about. But when they cut to the camera and the top of the rope, it's clear it's being suspended off a line. And so what they're doing, I think, is sort of saying that this is nonsense. It's kind of, it's satire in a way,
right.
But it's hideously racist satire, so we won't go there. But I thought that was interesting that even back in 1921, people were kind of taking this and saying, it couldn't possibly exist because of Western values. Yeah. But then there's other people going, well, what do you know about Eastern traditions and what the magic can do there?
Well, what's really fascinating about it, actually, if you think about it from what you're saying, is arguably the most famous magic trick in the world may never have existed, which is quite bizarre if you think about it.
Yes, I think that. I think that's probably true, but it gets much weirder. It gets much weirder. So the magic community did something really unprecedented. They began offering a massive reward to anybody who could perform the trick. So we're talking huge sums of money. So as early as 1899, there was rewards offered, and at one point, Lord Lonsdale offered £10,000. Which is a complete fortune.
Wouldn't it, back then? Sorry, what year was that?
1899.
Wow.
Yeah, in today's money, that runs into millions. I should have done the calculation, but it's definitely millions.
It's got to be millions, isn't it? Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. So this led to a bunch of expeditions heading out to India to find somebody who could perform the trick, because then they could get the bounty. It's going back to this English gentleman's club kind of idea of, I say, let's go out, this will be a jape.
But also, what's interesting about it, I mean, I don't know if you had to do all the elements, including the kind of decapitation and putting back together, but that amount of money, I would have thought a lot of magicians, no matter where they were in the world, would go, I'll just try and reverse engineer this. So it shows how difficult it must be, because if that's on offer, you want to work out a way of doing it. I know you talked about Penn and Teller, but doing it much, much later. But wow, okay.
Well, it set the scene for a number of magical setups because the audience was so familiar with what they were with this this idea of a rising. Yeah, so you will probably have seen several times in your life, be it on a cartoon or be it on another magic show, the idea of a stereotypically dressed Indian gentleman, perhaps sitting cross-legged, playing a flute, charming a snake. So that's the snake charming. But then a rope comes in and starts climbing to the ceiling. And so the idea is that, in that particular trick, perhaps, the rope is doing something magical and going up to the ceiling. And, of course, if that was to happen outdoors, that would be truly magical. There would probably be some kind of, internal wire mechanism or something like that.
Yeah.
But the not so surprising thing about the expedition out to India to find somebody, not a single person came back. Not one. Nobody could find anybody who could perform the trick.
Right. They did come back. They just didn't come back with a solution.
Oh, yeah, they came back.
I thought it was going to get even more sinister then. Anyone who's ever searched for the trick has never returned. No, not that. Okay.
No. So the most popular theory is that the Chicago Tribune hoax was mass hypnosis. But could a single performer mesmerise an entire crowd, making them all believe that they saw a rope rise and boy vanish? The worst stories of this happening. One famous account involved Earl Haig, a British commander. His staff sergeant claimed Haig was once mesmerised by a fakir into seeing the beginning of the trick, seeing the rope begin to rise before the sergeant himself broke the spell. But many magicians were sceptical. How could you hypnotise an entire crowd, especially one with many people who didn't even speak the performer's language?
Yeah. Well, I've always, I don't know, I'm not an expert on it, but I've always understood that not everyone can be hypnotised in a crowd. That's why they do that selection process at the start. So is it somnambulistic? I think it's called. I could have got that wrong. But there are people who more pre-proposed, is that a word? More likely.
Predisposed.
That's the one I'm looking for. More likely to be hypnotised, and some people you just can't. But I don't know. It'd be interesting if anyone knows for sure if that's right. That's the whole thing with the magic world, hypnotism. There's so much misinformation out there and smoke and mirrors. It's hard to know what could be a fact and what couldn't be, right? But I understood it. You couldn't hypnotise everyone in a crowd. It's not possible.
Yes, that is true. And so I did actually, interestingly, I used to work with somebody whose father was a stage hypnotist.
Right.
One of those ones where they sort of get you to eat an onion and tell you it's an apple.
Is this why whenever I play Tina Turner's Simply the Best, you dance around the studio like a chicken? Is this a hangover from those days?
That I did. Yeah.
They sit down as if nothing had happened.
Well, so his explanation for this was some people could be, but for those who couldn't, because he performed in sort of nightclubs in Marbella, they had a mechanism where they would discreetly show the person they brought up on stage a note saying, go along with what I say and you get £100. Okay. So they would literally pay people, and it didn't matter how bad their acting is because it doesn't really matter.
Does it?
No, exactly.
Better than all the rest. Sit down, Ben, sit down.
This led to an exotic theory, a drug-induced hallucination.
Oh.
One of the most influential proponents of the idea was Lord Frederick Hamilton, who relayed a story from Calcutta's Chief of Police, Colonel Bernard. Bernard claimed he and a friend went to see a fakir performing the trick in a courtyard. It was thick with dense smoke coming from braziers, not that sort, burning, and he described them as mysterious compounds. He described witnessing the entire trick: the rising rope, the climbing boy, the disappearance. Being what he described himself as a modern man, Colonel Bernard had bought a camera. He took photographs at various points during the performance. This should be the smoking gun. When he developed the film, the photos revealed that nothing had happened at all.
At all. Wow.
The images showed the fakir and the boy remaining motionless throughout the entire performance.
Wow.
So his conclusion was the smoke from the braziers must have contained a powerful unknown hallucinogen, forcing the two men to see what the fakir had wanted them to see.
Right, through suggestion after that point.
Which is, but how do you get two people to see the same thing?
I guess you tell them that's what they're going to see.
Yes.
So maybe that's where the hypnosis, again, don't know anything about it, but I wonder if drug-induced hypnosis, you can probably do that, maybe? I don't know.
Possibly. Although there's various points to that story that make me kind of go, So it would have been very interesting, and nobody, unfortunately, had the forethought to do this. But, for example, do they see the same part of the trick at the same time? When the first body part falls, what is it, an arm or a leg?
Right.
All of those elements. What is the incantation that the fakir says? Do you remember any of the words? All of that would have made it, it would have been clear what had been going on.
But also I'm thinking, if you had, so it would have to be some kind of hallucinogenic drug, right? That they'd induced through the smoke.
I would have thought it would have been a salvia or something like that.
Yeah, but even so, I wouldn't, it's just relating to that. You'd think, God, I felt really weird. Is there any description of that? Or hallucinating after the performance finished? Or, to have it that specific. A, you don't know that you're drugged. And B, you only hallucinate that one trick and then the thing stops. It seems odd as well.
That's right. So some of the suggestions that I'd read online, there was salvia, which can provoke intense hallucinations, but for a very short amount of time.
Right, okay.
But they're notoriously very hard to control. And what happens to the victim is sometimes that they lose all sense of time. So there's one account, and I might have mentioned this before, but it's a book I often go back to.
It's just the duvet on
That's
the washing
right,
line.
yes,
Yeah,
yes.
that always freaks me out.
Yes.
Tell it again.
So this person took some salvia and then they became a duvet on a bed for years. They could describe the seasons coming and going. They could describe themselves being washed. But, they would see the summer come along, the winter set in. That's how they knew the seasons were passing. Years and years. They believed that they were a bed sheet for 30 years. And then they just came back to reality. They'd been gone 7 seconds. That's the entire hallucination.
I always think wash day must have been the most exciting day of your life, mustn't it?
Yeah, I get to go inside a washing machine.
So for in his case, he's hallucinating something, but very specific to him by the sounds of it, because I don't believe everybody hallucinates being a duvet.
They don't, but they often...
sheet.
No, they don't.
But in 7 seconds, it lasted for him, yet he felt it lasted a lifetime.
That's right. To get the dose right, to get it so that one of your audience doesn't end up as a bedsheet in Calcutta for 30 years.
Yeah.
I think it's hard because they could so easily have had their hands turned to fish or imagine they were an aeroplane. So I do really struggle with this as a solid kind of, did this really, 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 really happen?
Yeah.
There's a genuine explanation. There's a genuinely paranormal explanation as well, and that is that the trick was a psychic phenomena. It was never a trick at all.
Right.
It is suggested that it was a demonstration of advanced yogic powers, what is known in Hindi philosophy as Maya, the power to create illusions so powerful they seem real.
Bit Tolpa-esque.
Well, no, because in the Tulpa that sort of exists. This is
so this thing isn't coming into existence.
No.
It's just making you think it's in existence.
It's an illusion.
Right,
yes,
right.
It's only in your head.
Yeah. Okay.
The magician, through what is called concentrated visualization, could project his mental images into the minds of the audience, making them see his thoughts. According to this theory, there is no rope and no buoy. It was all just a telepathic vision. There's a psychiatrist, Dr. Alexander Cannon, who was so convinced that this is the correct theory, in 1934, he told the Magic Circle's occult committee That's a committee you'd want to be on, isn't it?
Oh, that'd be interesting, wouldn't it?
That he could recreate the plan.
Oh.
His idea, bring fakirs from India and project thought forms so powerful that everyone would see the trick.
Okay.
I love this bit. So Matt, he's in the magic circle occult bit.
I've got a cunning plan.
I'm going to go to India. I'm going to get some fakirs. I'm going to bring them back. And there's all these people sat around. I imagine that, they're all sort of, I can see they've kind of got dark hats on, maybe smoking something that maybe is like a luxury tobacco. And then he drops on them, I just need 50,000 for expenses.
Right. Okay.
How much? 50,000. There's nothing. It's a mere snip.
Yeah. Were his powers of persuasion that good?
No, they declined his offer.
Get out of here.
I love it. He was imagine walking up the street there going, how much should I ask him for? 20. That doesn't seem enough. Can I come up with a fakir for 20? I'll go 40. And his mate goes, just go 50.
Although it does remind me of there's a good story about Friedkin, the guy who directed The Exorcist.
Yeah.
He, back in the days when, Hollywood was just like awash with money, him and his friend were going on holiday and they were driving to the airport. And I think Friedkin said to his friend, should we have a really, really good holiday? And his friend was like, what do you mean? He said, hold on, let's just phone the studio. So he phoned the studio and said he had a new movie idea to pitch. And he leaves his mate in the car, goes into the studio, don't know which studio it was, comes out 15 minutes later with £10,000 in cash.
No.
And his friend said, what did you do? He said, I just pitched him a movie. And he said, well, what was it? He said, I don't know, I just made it up on the spot, but said I needed 10,000 for development costs. Let's go have a great holiday.
Oh my God.
Brilliant. It's something along those lines. I may have not got that exactly right. I think it's in... I don't know if it's in there's a couple of books I'm thinking of. It's in one of them. But yeah, it's fantastic. What a great thing to be able to do. Right?
Do you recall if he ever made the movie?
I don't think so, no. He literally just made up some rubbish on the spot and they gave him 10 grand.
And that's how he came to make King Ralph.
Yeah. The Indian Rope Project, it was called, probably working title. Yeah.
Well... So the idea is, or the ideas floating around are this mass hallucination, impossible illusion, psychic projection. Until the late 20th century, researchers just had no idea. But then somebody came through with something which may have solved the puzzle once and for all.
Oh, okay.
In the 1990s, researchers Peter Lamont and Richard Wiseman, you're probably familiar with Richard Wiseman. He writes a lot of books about...
Yes.
Sort of not debunking the paranormal, but explaining... Yeah.
We've talked about him on the podcast a few
times,
I think. Yeah.
They conducted a comprehensive study of the trick, analysing every eyewitness account they could find. And the conclusion was surprisingly simple. The legend, they argued, was the result of exaggeration over time. So they discovered a direct correlation. The more time that had passed between someone supposedly seeing the trick and when they reported it, the more impressive and fantastical their story became.
Right.
An account told the next day might describe a simple balancing act. That same story, told 20 years later, had magically morphed into a full-blown vanishing boy dismemberment spectacle.
Right. I was thinking this way you were talking about it, because the idea of, making the rope stand up, that, there must be lots of ways that you can do that. You've got those, you've probably all seen them, the magic wands that are all floppy and then suddenly they go stiff, you know what I mean?
Yes.
And even you could see it that having a small boy climb up it could be one thing and then climb back down. But it's all the bit that happens after that is the most magical, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Or the most unbelievable, I should say. So that's interesting. So over time, it's just getting embellished and embellished.
Yeah, exactly. And there's sort of this notion that people, particularly if they have got it in the back of their mind that the trick is there, they want to tell people that they've been there.
They've seen it.
Yeah. It's like I once knew somebody at school whose dad was like a mega hippie, and he would tell these stories about everything that he'd seen at Woodstock. You know, he'd seen Hendrix, he'd seen the lot.
Right.
One day, whilst having a few beers around there when we were older teenagers, his wife said, he never even went there. He's just seen it off television. He's convinced himself he's gone.
It's a bit like that. I've said it before, but it's the Bowie's last gig as Ziggy Stardust, where he broke up the band and all that stuff. I think I've mentioned this before. For the amount of people who say they were at that gig in Hammersmith Odeon, it would be able to fill Wembley Stadium.
Yeah. It's a similar.
Now, I'm not saying all of them have convinced themselves they were there, but at least they claim they were there.
So, what was it that people were seeing? So, there's a couple of possibilities. The first is the pole balancing trick. This involves a child acrobat balancing on the end of a long bamboo pole held up by the magician. Remember the first photograph of the trick, published in 1919? Later analysis revealed that the rope was almost certainly a bamboo pole.
Okay.
The second is the classic basket trick, where an assistant is placed in a basket, swords are thrust through it, and the assistant emerges unharmed. Some versions of this trick do involve the assistant seeming to vanish from the basket and reappear elsewhere in the crowd. So according to Lamont and Wiseman, witnesses saw these similar, still impressive but similar tricks. Then, after hearing the grand legend of the rope trick, now famous worldwide thanks to the Chicago hoax, their minds kind of mixed and matched, embellished, exaggerated what they've seen, until their memory fit the legend.
Right.
The Indian rope trick, in its legendary form, probably never happened at all. It wasn't Indian, it didn't use a rope, and it was, as the paper concludes, an example of how unreliable evidence can create and maintain belief in non-existent phenomena.
Right.
So this leaves us with the idea, unfortunately, the Indian rope trick didn't ever happen. Oh. I know, but there is. I'm not going to offer you a but and go. It is. There is another paranormal explanation. The only other explanation is it would be paranormal. And I was thinking. So there's various tricks and other things that people have seen in African cultures and Indian cultures, and to Western eyes, it was hard for them to fathom how they could do it. So an example of that would be, you've probably seen them in African tribes. There's one particular tribe, and they build these kind of costumes, these puppets that are man-sized. They look like haystacks.
Yeah.
And they dance around. You seen these?
Yeah.
And they perform one particular dance called the broomstick dance. Well, that's what it's called in our language anyway. And it appears that basically a bunch of hay has come to life and is dancing with a broomstick.
Right.
To Western eyes, we kind of go, well, how is that possible? I don't really see a man or a woman or a human figure in there. Well, it just so happens that these people are taught from birth how to do this. They're part of a separate part of the society in that tribe. Right. They're taught all these tricks. It's as if you teach a ballet dancing girl from the age of 2 how to ballet dance. By the time she's 19, she's dancing like a deity. It's the same kind of thing.
How do they stand on the toes of their feet like that?
Exactly. So how do you disguise the fact you're a human while you're covered in hay? Yeah. And straw? Well, you learn the tricks of the art. Yeah. And so there's very many things like that. But I discovered a Western example of this that I love and I remember, and I had sort of misremembered it. And I found on some Reddit forums other people had misremembered it. And I'll share the video link of the original trick on the show notes. But if you grew up in the UK, you might remember Paul Daniels vanishing an elephant.
Yeah.
How did it work for you? What's your memory of Paul Daniels vanishing the elephant?
It's weird. Now you've set it up that way, I'm Okay, this is what's going through my mind. I'm not saying this is right. I'm picturing it. I'm picturing the elephant on stage, a kind of red curtain cloth, paddy poof, gone.
All right, okay. So
That's not a magic word, paddy poof. I just made it up, I think.
slightly offensive.
Sorry.
He did it. He did it, as far as I can tell, on television twice.
Right.
Once outside with the famous, I guess, naturalist Johnny Morris,
Okay.
and once inside without Johnny Morris.
Yeah.
They're both done in the same way, with all kinds of pomp and ceremony. And I'll describe to you the one that most people remember, which is the one outside, because it also involved members of the British Armed Forces. Mm-hmm. So, in a nutshell, Paul Daniels, who, if you don't know, he was probably the most famous magician to ever worked on British television, and his assistant, Debbie McGee, who is still with us, Paul Daniels sadly died. We're outside in a park in London, and there's all these members of the army, basically, is the best way to put it. The soldiers all around, and they've got a giant tent, which has a roof on it, like a circus tent, and it has no sides, it just has poles. And Paul Daniels comes along with Johnny Morris. They're both dressed in their safari suits because, of course, they are.
Yeah.
And it's an elephant. The elephant goes inside, is ridden inside the tent by Debbie McGee.
Yep.
The sides are put up by the army, and it's the army. And they say to Paul, well, we've been checking this all day. We can't see any trick at all here. Don't know how you're going to do this. So the camera pans around all four sides of the tent, and there's the army standing there to attention. You got to trust the army, haven't you? And Johnny Morris is like, I don't know how you're going to do this, Paul. Don't know how you're going to do this. Then they drop all the sides of the tent. There's Debbie McGee, who's had a costume change, standing by herself. The elephant has gone. Where's the elephant gone? Johnny Morris is like, oh my goodness me, how did you do this, Paul? How did you do this? And Paul's like, well, you know, I don't know where to suggest you look. And then the camera cuts away a bit, and then he goes, just to prove I didn't hide it in the roof, they pull the roof off, and then they pan round, and there's the elephant, not in the roof, but behind them on the grass. And as viewers on telly, we were like, oh my goodness. But loads of people remember, like, Debbie and the elephant disappearing.
Right.
They remember the elephant appearing somewhere else in London. Some people completely misremember it and remember the elephant appearing back in the studio in front of an audience. They don't remember the subtlety that he was, like, just in a different part of the field. And then when you look at the trick, there is one, the BBC TV cameras, they actually, if you look very closely, they give away how the trick is done. Because everyone's in on it. They pull down the back of the tent first, lead the elephant out, and they place the elephant just where the camera can't see it because the roof is obscuring the angle.
Right.
The elephant stays there. Then they pull down the rest of them. Everyone is looking at the tent and does their best amazed faces. One reason for using the army, of course, is you can swear them all to secrecy because they're in the army.
Right.
But if you look very, 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 very closely, you can see just a little bit of the elephant's foot poking out. And so the reason he says it's not hiding in the roof is so that he can pull the roof off, and the camera angle can then pick up the elephant.
Right.
But that isn't the important thing. The important thing is how people completely misremembered how Paul Daniels made an elephant disappear. And the reason they did is because it was on primetime television in the UK when there were loads of children watching. It was pitched at a family audience. The next week in school, all these kids were talking and saying, oh, do you see Paul Daniels make the elephant disappear? Oh, yeah. And then they build upon those stories. And then because it's not repeated ever again, people it fades into just into the back of your memory. And so when somebody asks you, do you remember Paul Daniels' disappearing elephant? They go, yeah, it was amazing. And he did so there was one person who was convinced they made him appear in Trafalgar Square.
Right.
So this is the same thing that is happening with the Indian rope trick. But I love this idea that there were these magical elements that people really took to heart and said, well, maybe he is projecting images into somebody's mind. Yeah. And it's completely possible, of course, that is what happened to those two men who claimed to have seen it and took the photographs and didn't get anything exposed. But I suppose it puts to rest in my mind, like, how come we haven't seen the Indian rope trick done, live on television in a big spectacular? That's the reason why it can't be done.
I wonder as well if, there's a bit of this as well psychologically, where there's a bit of, even though logically it's a trick, you almost want to believe in the magic. Again, we've mentioned it before, but Houdini, the great kind of relationship between Houdini and Arthur Conan Doyle, and Arthur Conan Doyle basically said, there's this story of Arthur Conan Doyle saying, I worked out how you did that trick. And Houdini's like, oh, right, how did I do it? And he went, well, you really do have magical power.
Yeah.
He wanted to believe it, and I'm not saying he was probably an extreme version of that, but, you still want to believe in the fantasy and the magicalness of it.
Yeah, oh, you do. Well, you talk about Houdini. There were people... So he did the I guess it's a fairly famous trick with the trunk and the weight.
Yeah.
So he gets a small boy to come and pick up a trunk, and it's easy for the small boy to pick it up, and then a big muscle man comes over and is unable to lift it, and for ages, for the same reason as people were mystified over the Indian rope trick. People would go, yeah, oh, maybe he does have magical powers. We can't think of any way of doing this, because nobody understood. It wasn't widely understood electromagnets.
Yeah.
So he had just the trick is simply done with electromagnet, but because people didn't know that technology existed.
Yeah,
that's how that idea of Houdini being actually magical happened.
Yeah,
and like you said, when it was revealed how he'd done it, there were loads of people who sort of said, oh, he's just telling you.
That's the misdirection.
That's the misdirection. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a rubbish misdirection if that is the misdirection, because it's really disappointing. But yeah.
I like that concept that, this thing gets planted in your mind. It's reminding me of the toaster hoax. You know that one, or the Wiki one?
No.
That there was this thing on Wiki. It was a big story about the guy who invented the toaster, and somebody just set up basically a fake Wiki page, and it wasn't true, but it just held traction. I think the Wiki page may still be up there, and it took a few years for, I think it was 2 students who said, no, we just did it as a bit of a joke to see if we could get something out there. But there's, I won't go into the whole detail because I can't remember most of it, but it was quite an elaborate story about how this guy, I think in the 1800s, invented the world's first toaster. But it was all made up by these 2 students, basically. But it did take, people believed it.
That's very interesting. Yeah. See, when we talk about, we always come back to this, when we talk about the paranormal, we have to be very careful that we're not just building on, I guess you call houses on sand.
Yeah.
Like every time we explore something like Cannock Chase, we know, and we do point out, there's only one source for some of those stories, and they've just been embellished.
Yeah.
But more enigmatically, I think the Indian rope trick also reminds me of somebody like Uri Geller, who has performed some feats that some magicians say, I know how he did it, but they've not been able to say exactly how he did the CIA test. It always comes down to, there was a problem with the the room, or there was a stooge.
Security was bad, and it was his manager who was passing notes to him.
Exactly.
That was the Randy
Yeah.
solution. Yeah,
But that's completely unproven,
Yeah.
really. I mean, he might disagree, but I have not seen any proof that that is actually what's been happening.
Yeah.
But there is one magic trick which it's apparently known as the Holy Grail of card tricks. It's known as the burglars effect.
Okay.
And it's quite famous in magic circles, and there's a reason for that, and I'm going to come on to that in the extra scoop because I find that fascinating.
Okay.
That's not particularly paranormal, but it's very enigmatic because even today there is not a good explanation for exactly how he does this trick, and it's only him that performs it.
Yeah.
So we'll come on to that.
Your point that you made, though, of this that's really worth bearing in mind with relating it to ghost stories or UFO sightings. And weirdly, I'm thinking of the Broadhaven one, the kids there, that they obviously saw something that was a bit weird. But I remember us talking and they all roughly drew the same thing. But then some of the kids were like, oh, this spaceman came out, and a couple of them were like, he had cat ears. And so you can see how you just got to be careful that, I don't know, or other examples of, it floated across the room and then it took its head off and put it back on again and then travelled up the chimney. It's like, as you may have seen something, but does that get embellished over time? And your memory of it get embellished?
My favourite example of that is when they sent a group of school children to a Universal theme park.
Right.
And then a couple of days later asked who remembered seeing Mickey Mouse.
Oh, I remember, yes.
And then some people do, and then the amount of people who saw Mickey Mouse increases over time. And of course, nobody saw Mickey Mouse because it's a Universal theme park.
Right.
And that is pretty much the same effect as this. But this kind of yellow journalism, as it's called, this idea of making a story up just for traction. We spoke about it in the moon observations and things like that. It's more often called out these days, and doesn't. There's less sort of paranormal stuff in there, unfortunately, these days. But it did. I was minded to go back to the the panorama episode with the spaghetti.
Yes. Yeah.
So that was in 1962. I might have that day wrong, but a famous British factual television programme joined the spaghetti harvest in Italy.
Yeah, it was April Fool's.
It was as an April Fool's, and there were many people who, despite other people recognising it being an April Fool, they did think that spaghetti still grew on trees. And even as I was growing up, I remember people in the playground.
My mum believed it.
Right, yeah. I remember people saying that their grandparents told them that you picked spaghetti.
Yeah.
It grew on a plant and you picked it and dried it, because that's what was told to them in the show. And it just goes into your psyche, and you're just like, well, that's obviously how you make spaghetti.
Yeah. And if you don't know, you don't know. Well, that's amazing. And interesting. And I'm glad we did that, because I kind of... the Indian rope trick is just the fact that it is so famous, and it seems unlikely that it certainly happened when it's said to have happened, that something else is going on. Fascinating. Well, if you want to hear about, what was that card trick called again?
The burglars effect.
The burglars effect. Come and join us at Ben and Peter's Extra Scoop on Patreon. And we'll be talking about that. I've got some underwater UFO stuff to talk about as well. So should be a good extra scoop.
It's a mixed bag.
It's a real mixed bag. Join us at patreon.com/TQM pod. I should say, I think if you're on Spotify, you can see Ben and Peter's Extra Scoop, and it says paid on it. But if you click on it, it does take you to Patreon. So I think you can... join that way as well. I'm pretty sure you can. Anyway,
I believe you can.
Yeah, so just click on the app in.
God, we're so technologically advanced.
We really are. We
I've
really
got
are.
a digital watch.
No wonder we get fooled by the Indian rope trick. Well, look, that was great, Ben. And yeah, we'll see you next week for more quantum mechanics weirdness.
See you next time.
Bye.
Are you the quantum mechanics?